Welcome to the Mentor Podcast, where the most highly motivated entrepreneurs come to get their weekly dose of financial stability with host Ron LeGrand, as well as other nationally recognized thought leaders who will teach you how to get, grow, and protect your wealth.
Hello there, Ron LeGrand here, and I have been tasked with doing some lessons about the mistakes people make when they get into real estate, and that's what we're going to do here. I've got 32 of them to talk about, and trust me, there could have been a lot more. Now, I want you to understand that this is not about how to do deals. This is about the mistakes I've seen people make while they're doing deals, as well as far as me and people that I teach for over 42 years now. So I've done well over 3,000 deals, and every once in a while I still catch myself making some of these mistakes. So I'm going to lay them out for you, and then you can do what you want with them. But again, this is not an in-depth training on anything except my observations of what people do wrong. And maybe I can steer you from making that same mistake, some of which could cost you a heck of a lot of money, as I know they have cost me. Now, I'm going to do this in 3 sections. So we're going to stop at the end of one section, start with another lesson when you want to tune it in, and then we've got 3 lessons altogether. And there's 32 of them, so I'm going to break them up into about thirds. We're going to talk about the operations of the business, mistakes, buying mistakes, and selling mistakes. Mistake number 1 is this right here is the reason why a lot more people aren't in the real estate business. You probably know that as well as I do. And if you're watching this and you have some experience, then you know really how irrelevant this is to our business, because it does not take money to buy real estate. In fact, I'll show you some samples of some properties that I've just done recently in the wholesale business and made a lot of money and at no risk whatsoever. And the way I operate the terms business, we do the same thing. So if you're under the impression that you need your money to buy real estate, I would suggest you take a little bit more time and invest in your education so you can clearly understand and believe that it doesn't make money. And I will prove that to you in the upcoming PowerPoints. Now, some deals do take money. Some deals don't take money. And the ones that do take money, it doesn't have to be your money. Even if I'm going to pay cash for a house, I'm not going to write. Well, I do, but most people don't. They get money from a private lender and they borrow more than they need. We've got all kinds of lessons on doing that. So sometimes you'll need a little bit of money. For example, you're buying a terms deal. If you understand what that is, you're just taking over somebody's debt. So you got to pay some closing cost. Sometimes the seller wants a small down payment, but even then, you can get that money from other people and don't have to be your money. The easiest way to get started in this business and not use any of your money, frankly, is wholesaling houses. Wholesaling houses. Get a contract, sell contract, get check. There's 2 types of deals. There's cash deals and there's terms deals. Cash deals are those that we write up a contract to pay cash for the house. It looks just like this. This is a purchase and sale agreement right here. Okay, no biggie. Front and back, written in layman's terms, and we've used it all over the country. So it's a simple purchase and sale agreement. And when we get the seller to sign that, now we have the right to put it on the market and sell that contract. So we can do the cash deals, but that doesn't mean we have to come up with the cash. Right? But the contract calls for paying all cash. Now, of course, if I'm going to buy it and rehab it, then we have to come up with the cash using private money. On terms deals, we do not. In fact, I'll show you a terms deal probably in the next lesson, I think, or in the next session, of what it's worth to buy the houses on terms without using your money and not sell them, but in fact put lease option tenant buyers in there for the growth and the real profit in real estate. The cash deals are for a quick check. The terms deals are for a quick check, money monthly, money later, and paying you months and months and years and years and years after you bought the property. I'll show you one just to make the case. Again, cash deals are funded with private money. private money, individuals, human beings, not people in the loan business, not loan sharks, not mortgage brokers, not banks, just human beings that have money sitting around and they want to get a higher rate of return on it. But again, that's only if you intend to buy and rehab. There's a recent wholesale deal that I did. I put a contract on the house to buy the house. I can't remember what the after repaired value was. We assigned the contract. We from a $58,000 to a $95,000 assignment and pick up a check for $37,000. What did we do to get that check? We got a contract signed, and we sent out an assignment of that contract to our buyer, and then it went to the closing agent, and they did all of the work, and we got a check. I mean, I've never seen a business that I can make that kind of money and doing almost nothing to get it. Oh, the ARV was $200 on that house, and we needed $50 in repairs. Now, I know it needed $50 in repairs, but I had no intentions of ever doing them. So I could have borrowed $130,000. Just think about it. If the ARV is $200, I could have borrowed $135,000 from a private lender, and that means that I would have had enough money to buy the house if I wanted to, and do the repairs, and still have some money left over, quite a bit of money left over. But if you're just starting, that's probably not the way you want to start. You want to just start flipping the house, and you hear a lot about it. You know, a lot of people on the internet talking about wholesaling and such, but there's a difference between talking about it and actually doing it. That means that I could get paid. If I take the 130, subtract the 58, that leaves 72 left over. And if I wanted to repair it and spend the 50 on it, I'd still have $22,000 left over. But I did not want to do that. I just wanted to get out and get the quick, easy money with absolutely no cost, no grief, and literally get my money within 15 days of putting the property under contract instead of 6 months of rehabbing it and waiting to the end. Now, look, I got 3 rehabs going as I speak, so I got nothing against rehabs, but that's the hard way to make money. And I'm assuming that if you're watching this, that you are probably beginning looking for your first or your next deal. But if you've been around a while, you know that what's involved in rehabbing a house, a lot of things can go wrong. So I didn't rehab it because if I would rehab the house, well, here it is. In fact, here's one of those wholesale houses I was telling you about. The ARV on this thing was $175. That means that if this thing gets renovated, that it's worth $175, and it would be sold to owner occupants to live in. And I hope this isn't your dream home, but this is the kind of houses we make money on wholesaling with. They're down at the bottom end. We agreed to buy that house for $48,000. It was actually a probate deal. And so we got a contract with the heirs. If we'd have renovated the house, it would have cost about $50,000. However, I never intended to renovate the house, but instead I sold the contract for $85,000. So if I paid $48,000 and I sold a contract for $85,000, that means I netted $37,000. I did not buy the house. I never owned the house. Let me say that again. I got a contract to buy it. I had an assignment of contract signed by the buyer, sent it to the closing agent. They did all the closing. I got a check for $37,000 for doing what? Finding seller, get contract, flip contract. There's no easier way to make money in business, than wholesaling a house. Now, well, looking back, could I rehab that house? Sure. I could have borrowed, look, if I paid $48,000 for it and need $50 in repairs, I needed maybe $100,000 to do the deal. It's worth $175,000. I could have easily borrowed $110,000, $115,000 on it if I wanted to go through all of that. I chose not to. I've renovated over 1,000 houses. I chose not to. Okay. My choice, 37 now or maybe 50 later. This is a $230,000 house, the ARV. We bought it for, we could put it under contract for $60,000. It would have needed about $40,000 in repairs, but we sold the contract for $112,000. Okay, let's see. Contract for $60,000 to buy it, contract for $112,000 to sell it. $52,000 net profit on a house we never owned. By the way, that one took 16 days, as I recall. 16 days. Okay. Here's another one worth $310,000. Bought it for 202. Would have taken 50, but we sold it as is to actually sold this one to owner occupants that are going to fix the house and move into it. And we still netted $27,800 on it without touching it. Could have renovated that one, but if we'd have renovated that one, paid 202, spent 50 on it. That's 252. If I had, and it's only worth 310. That's just not enough money. Look, I made $27,000 without touching the house. Might have made 40 or 45 doing the renovating, taking months to do it. There's just not enough spread in it to make me want to rehab and retail it. This is a little old cheap house in a little old cheap neighborhood. Paid $79 for it. At least we agreed to pay that. And we sold it for $99.9. Only netted $15,367 on it, but that's below my normal standard because I don't like touching a house for less than $20,000. But so I'd ask you, would you rather have the 15 or nothing? All right, we chose the 15. In fact, I teach everybody your $20,000 should be your norm. In other words, I add all the ones I make more, add all the ones I make less. I make at least $20,000. Okay, this is the one that's dragging down my number, but this one's even worse. Little old cheap house in a really cheap neighborhood. Would need at least 35 in repairs. We netted 13.5 on that one. And so those are the wholesale deals. Those are the wholesales we've done in the last 2 months. And those 5 houses alone netted $147,000 some odd dollars. Now you think about that. 5 wholesale deals, all done within 2 months, netting $145,000. That's a pretty good business. That's a pretty good business. Almost no outgo, all out income, no risk, none whatsoever. No risk, no loans, no guaranteeing debt, no banks, need nobody's permission. In, out, get fast check. Now you see why most people coming into the industry start with wholesaling houses, as I did in 1982. I started, my first check was $3,000. Okay, remember, that was 1982 now. I don't know what that is today, probably 20 grand. But that was the most important check of my entire life because that was my first check. Before I got that first check, I had the same doubts that everybody else has. I'm looking at all the reasons why it won't work. Listen to all the people telling me why real estate doesn't work here. It's a scam, blah, 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 trying to steal my dreams. Fortunately, I got that first check. They couldn't get at my dreams anymore because now I know not only does it works for me, and it works here, and it works now. Trust me, wholesaling will work wherever you're at. Right now, regardless of the economic climate around you and the interest rates and the inflation or whatever. There's always junkers out there that are going to be wholesale, thousands of them a year across the country. All right. But wholesaling is one side of the business. One of the mistakes that people make is, or they could make if you're not careful, is start doing wholesaling, start getting checks, and just continue to do wholesaling for your whole career. There's a pretty long list of people that I know that do just exactly that. But the mistake is focusing on one way to make money in real estate, ignoring everything else, and walking over to dollars to get to the dimes, and never learn the rest of the business. The rest of the business is a terms business, okay? In the wholesaling business, I'm looking for price. I got to buy it cheap. If I don't buy it cheap, I'm not going to buy it because I got to have all kinds of room for the repairs to be done and all the costs that go along in the middle and still have a nice profit. I don't want to rehab a house for less than $50,000 net profit. That's after all of those expenses are taken out that they don't teach you on those television shows. So the other side of business is the terms business. In wholesaling, I agree to pay cash. Even though I wholesale them, I don't have to come up with the cash, but I agree to pay cash. Okay. But I got to get a low price. In the terms business, I do not agree to pay cash, and I don't have to have a low price. I want to get something off the retail price, but the money's in the terms, it's not in the price. There's only 3 kinds of terms, and frankly, look at it this way, because if you know me, you know I've been preaching terms for a long time because that's my favorite kind of deals. But there's nothing wrong with the kind of money that we make in wholesaling as well. So we use the wholesaling for generating quick cash, and then we use terms to generate cash today, cash monthly, cash later, and build wealth at the same time and reduce our taxes. There's only three kinds of terms. I can lease purchase it from the seller, or I can owner financing, buy it with owner financing from the seller, which is what I do most of the time, or I can buy it from the seller, what's called subject to, and I know you've heard that word if you've been around a while. That simply means I'm taking over the seller's debt, and the seller's not getting any money, and they're walking away from the house. All right. Well, I don't usually buy subject to. I buy with owner financing for reasons I'm not going to get in here today. And every once in a while, I'll lease purchase it and actually not buy it. But then that gives me the right to put a tenant buyer in there and make the same amount of money as if I bought it. But I'd rather own it. All right. I'd rather own it. So I'm always going for owner financing first. And then lease purchase is my default purchase method, I guess you'd call it. I usually would only lease purchase if, in fact, the seller won't sell it to me until their loan is paid off. Okay, when I owner finance it, the loan stays in their name till sometime in the future when it gets paid off. The same is true for lease purchasing. The same is true for subject to. The loan stays in their name in all three cases. So terms deals are not the majority. They're definitely the minority. But they require, lease purchase requires no down payment and no closing costs. Remember, I'm not buying it. I'm just leasing it. All right. Owner financing requires some closing costs. Sometimes I pay it all. Sometimes I pay none. Sometimes we split it. And sometimes a small down payment. So owner financing will require some money, but it's a small amount of money, maybe a few $1,000s. And frankly, most anybody can come up with that money to buy that house because let's say I have $10,000 in the deal. All right. Well, I'm going to put it on the market and get $25,000, $30,000 non-refundable option deposit out of a tenant buyer. So my few $1,000s is only in the house for a few days before I'm going to get it back with the premium. However, if you can't raise the money, there's plenty of people around you that will put up the money if you make it worth their while. So a big mistake that I've seen a lot of people make is they turn away from deals because they require a little bit of money and they don't have the money, so they don't know what to do next. That is a huge mistake. All right. All right. Here's an example. I owe the seller $300,000 and the seller owes $250,000. Now, the way I buy these owner financing deals is that my attorney will create a wraparound mortgage or deed of trust for the $300,000 to the seller from my land trust. And the $300,000 wraps around the $250,000. The $250,000 is part of the $300,000. So in this case, I'll make a payment for the seller on their underlying loan, and I'll pay it directly to the bank. So I'm buying the house, in this case, with nothing down, which we do all the time, but I'm still going to have to pay some closing costs if I buy it with owner financing. But it's not a lot of money, and I'm going to get it right back very quickly. So in Florida, the closing cost on that deal, that $300,000 house, would be about $3,000. So if I can come up with $3,000, I can buy that $300,000 house. I don't know what it's worth. It doesn't say here what the R would be, but it says I owe the seller $300,000. So you can bet that I'm going to be, it's worth more than that. Probably minimum $315,000, $320,000 before I'd want to buy it. So I get the free equity in it. And I got to just continue making the payment that the seller's making. And I'm going to put somebody in the house and collect a big non-refundable option deposit. And if I'm doing a $300,000 house, I'm not going to accept less than $25,000 non-refundable option deposit from a lease option tenant buyer. So if I made the mistake of turning down this deal because I didn't have a little bit of money, it would cost me a lot of money. And I never would know what I lost. Because when I get that non-refundable option deposit, I get to keep it. It's my money. And if the seller moves out or don't buy the house, they don't get that $25,000 back. That's a non-refundable option deposit. And that's the big front-end check in the terms business. And in fact, the front-end check in the terms business is usually as much or more than a wholesale check from a junker. So I'm going to get cash up front, which some people mistakenly never learn that. And If they don't see where their cash is coming from, then they won't do a terms business. I want to make some money. I don't want to be in the rental business. I want to make some money. Well, you're not in the rental business. You're in the lease option business, and nobody's getting the keys to the house. In my case, with less than 5% down, and I usually get 10% down, and sometimes more, depending on the quality of the house. So there is a big front end check in the terms business. And then there's a monthly spread, and then the back end and all kinds of other advantages that I'll show you here in a second. Now, subject to simply means that I've got a contract with a seller that I'll just take over their $228,000 loan. That means that I'll start making payments a couple months after I buy the house. The seller signs the deed, signs the closing statement. They go, I am in total ownership of the property and I own it. Okay, there's a lot of houses being sold out there like that across the country, but there's some disadvantages to the seller. I'm not going to get into them now. On a terms deal, I get 2 to 3 months before my first payment is due. That is true for a lease option, for owner financing, and for subject to most of the time. So I got plenty of time to go find who I want to put in this house and get money from them. But in my case, I close first, and then I go put the tenant buyer in there. There are many cases where you can find a tenant buyer before you have to close, but honestly, I prefer to close it, take control of it, get it cleaned up, because most of these terms deals, they just need cleaned up, if that, and then put it right back on the market. But you have your choice. Frankly, the easiest thing to do is just close on it. You own it, you control it, and then put it on the market rather than trying to get people over there to look at it while the seller's still in it. I've done that a few times, but it's a pain in the neck. All right. On cash deals, let's say I'm going to borrow a private loan to buy and rehab a house and then some. See, it took me a long time to learn that I can borrow that private money and not make monthly payments on it. The last thing you want to do is make monthly payments on a private loan. If your intent is to rehab it and cash out of it, the private lender would just as soon let the interest accrue on the property, and when they get paid the principal and the accrued interest. They don't want monthly payments anyway. They're just a pain in the neck for them. So how come somebody didn't tell me this way back in the 80s? Okay, I must have went 15 years before the thought even occurred to me. When I borrow private money, there's no law that says I have to make a monthly payment. The interest accrues on the loan. Now I got no monthly payments. So one time I had 27 vacant houses scheduled for rehabbing, and all of them had a monthly payment on them. Okay, well, that's where I learned this lesson. No need for you to learn it. If you can't make money without money, you won't make money with money. Okay? And leverage your brain and your training, not your wallet. Not your wallet. Okay, mistake number 2, it takes credit. No, it does not take credit. In fact, on Planet Ron, if I catch you guaranteeing a debt, I'm going to send some big ugly bruiser after you to give you pain. This is the biggest mistake, in my opinion, that investors make in the business, is guaranteeing debt. I really believe it's the biggest mistake. I've seen a lot of empires topple because they had all this guaranteed debt. They think they got to go down to the bank and borrow money to buy a house and put up a down payment. Absolutely false. False. That's not true. That's conventional wisdom. And if that's the direction you're going, we need to correct that direction right away, because that's not how you make money in real estate. You risk your credit, you risk your assets, and you risk your marriage every time you go down and sign on a loan. There's no need for that. And don't do it. Do not do it. And how many houses do you think the bank's going to let you buy before they cut you off? They're only going to let you borrow a handful of loans, and then you're done. They're going to cut you off. Now what are you going to do? Now you can't buy any more houses because they cut you off. You go to another bank, they're not going to do it because they can see them on your credit report. So if they show up on your credit report, every time you buy a house, you are getting less and less lendable. The bank, by the way, could care less about your so-called equity in those properties, but they do care about your debt. Even if the house is covering that debt, they know how big of a house of cards that can be if you don't run your business correctly. Every time you borrow money from a bank, it's going on your credit report, and it's got to show on your financial statement. So again, you're going to be a lot more lendable if you got the assets, but the loans are not in your name. All guaranteed loans must show on your financial statement. You better not leave them off or it's bank fraud. However, you become a slave to a bank. But a non-recourse loan doesn't show on your financial statement or your credit report. That means if I buy a house with owner financing, no way I'm going to personally guarantee that debt. Okay, no way. I don't want the house bad enough to guarantee the debt. My land trust signs on the note to the seller, so my land trust is responsible for the debt. The only thing in my land trust is the house. So the house is guaranteeing the debt. But if I personally guarantee that debt, no matter how I buy it, on my credit, on my financial statement, it'll destroy your ability to actually borrow money one time if you think that the risk is worth you guaranteeing the debt. So clean up your financial statement and don't keep borrowing money from lenders where it shows on your credit report. Say, do you need a house or credit to wholesale a house? No, there's no money to borrow. Do you need credit to lease option a house? No. Okay. No seller is going to pull your credit report, and then you're not even going to fill out an application. And you don't need credit to buy a house subject to. You're taking over the debt, maybe some closing costs, but no credit, absolutely no credit. And you don't need credit to borrow money from private lenders. Private lenders are not loan sharks. They're not people that are in the loan business. They are human beings with money in an account or in their IRA that they want to get a 7 or 8% return on, which they're never going to get leaving it in the bank account. So you're performing a public service for those who want to be private lenders, and there's a never-ending supply of them. Their loans don't show on your credit report. They don't show on your financial statement because they are non-recourse loans, no personal guarantee. So the answer is no. You don't need credit to buy houses in this business. You do need to get trained how to do it without credit. And again, spend a little time learning how to do the business, and you won't think about using your credit anymore. And I hope you don't learn this stuff from the School of Hard Knocks. That's where I learned it. Okay. So there's no reason for you to do that. This whole thing is about, how about you avoiding some of these seminars that I took and I see others taking. I'm tired of being the pioneer. You should see the arrows in my back. Okay. Your turn to go out there and explore and, tell us what works and tell us what's not working, but do not guarantee debt. Do not guarantee debt, and do not let anybody talk you into it. And it's a lot easier to operate without credit than to rely on lenders, okay? When you're relying on lenders, you're waiting on them to do a loan. You never know what they're going to do or if they're going to do it. You never know what that interest rate is going to be. And now they got you. You're literally a slave to that bank as long as that loan is out. If you're doing non-recourse debt, you're not relying on anybody. You don't need any lender. The only permission you need is the sellers and you, the buyer. There's nobody else to ask. However, I don't want you to mistake what I just said. I said I do not want you to personally guarantee debt. I did not say I did not want you to get in debt. I don't want you to get in debt, but I want you to go out there and create all the non-recourse debt that you can possibly create it as fast as you can create it, and buy as many houses without signing on a note that you can buy as long as they have positive cash flow. And if you get that, you'll get where your real wealth in this business is going to come from. And you're also going to get the residual income that you don't get in wholesaling or rehabbing a house. In other words, you're going to get a check every month from the difference between the rent you collect and the payment you pay. Now, you've seen this online, probably, this BRRRR thing. Every time I watch this, I get nauseous. BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Okay, that makes sense. But there's two problems with that. Number one, I'm okay with the buying. I'm okay with the rehabbing. I'm not okay with the renting. The renting means that I'm putting a tenant in a house. I don't put tenants in houses. I put tenant buyers in houses who give me thousands of dollars up front and are responsible for 100% of the repairs. That's a totally different business than the rental business. Guys, there was a time when I had well over 200 tenants all at one time, and they're all rentals, and some of them Section 8. I used to have dark hair back then, but I tell you what, I got old quickly dealing with all that crap because they didn't care. Okay, tenant buyers care. They have a dog in the hunt. They got a big old multi-$1,000 deposit. And if they act up and don't pay the rent, they're going to lose that deposit. which they agree upon, signed in front of an attorney before they get the keys to the house. Totally different business than renting house. There's no way I want to rent a single family house when I get a little old deposit that I have to get back when they move out, when I can get thousands of dollars that I do not have to get back, and I don't have to do any repairs along the way. Big difference. And then, of course, there's that big refinance thing. Okay. What happens to people when they buy and fix it and refinance it and rent it? Okay, that seems like a good model to people who aren't experienced. But what they forget is they go down and refinance that property for 80% of its value, and they won't do that until about a year or so or more goes by. And now here they got this big debt. Their cash flow is very skinny. And here they get a check, and they quickly spend that check. Okay, now what? The debt goes on for 30 years. Okay, the check's going to go away in 30 days. So all I'm creating is a great big minefield that is going to come back and haunt me later when things go wrong. For example, if I go borrow 80% on that house, what am I going to do when that house needs repairs? What am I going to do when it needs a roof? What am I going to do when the tenant moves out? Where's the money going to come from? Because I got no excess cash flow to speak of, and it would be a mistake for you to rent out houses and take that money out and spend it anyway, because you're spending money that the houses are going to want back later. All right. I want you to have the residual income, but I want you to be in a position where you don't have to do those repairs. And if you do, it's between tenant buyers, and you've collected $20, $30, $40, $50,000 out of them up front. Should have set aside some of the money so you can handle them. But you don't get calls. You're not getting calls from people, my toilet is plugged up, my pipes are leaking or whatever. That's all their responsibility. I warrant the systems for 30 days, and after that, 100% of them are repaired by the tenant buyer. It is a condition of their option. They don't get in it unless they agree to that. So we not only don't want to refinance these houses, Look, here's a simple way to understand it. If I buy the house for cash, I'm going to sell the house for cash. Now, I can sell that wholesale or I can sell it retail. Either way, it's for cash. I don't rehab houses and even put tenant buyers in them. I put tenant buyers in the terms houses. So if I buy it on terms, it might need a little bit of work, but not much. I might do that work, or I might just let the tenant buyer do it on what I call a work for equity. So if I buy on terms, I sell on terms. Lease purchase. If I buy for cash, I sell for cash. It's just that simple. So there's no reason to refinance anyway, because if I'm going to rehab it, I'm going to list it and let a realtor sell it to me or for me for cash. So I don't need to go refinance it. I get my wealth out of the terms business on the houses that I don't have to go to the bank and borrow money on. And by the way, I take no risk because I'm not personally guaranteeing any of that debt. See, I hope I'm not losing you. But I do not rent houses. My tenant buyers are responsible for everything. And I don't refinance anything that requires credit or guarantee. Private loans don't require credit. They don't require a guarantee. Anything you do in the terms business doesn't require either of those. So you do not have to use your credit and take those risks and take those, create problems in your life. Trust me, there ain't nothing worse than having a negative cash flow come about and the problems just get in your head and you can't hardly function because you got so many things that you're worried about. You get your cash flow up and those worries won't be there anymore. Folks, I've been there. I understand what it's like not to know where the money's coming from to get through the next week. Even when I was in the house business, I didn't manage it correctly, and I was always short on cash until I finally figured it out. It only took me 10 years. Sure hope it doesn't take you that long. Just listen to Papa. When you are buying and refinancing, you're playing the cash flow shuffle. The cash flow shuffle is going to come bite you in the rump, especially when we're going into uncertain times and we don't know what the future is like. If you're worried about the future, get rid of your guaranteed debt, get all the non-recourse you can, get all the cash flow you can, and now you don't have this short-term fuse on these things because you bought them with terms. So there's no reason for you to worry about the price on the house going down. If the house is not for sale, What do you care if the value goes down? You got tenant buyers in it. Hey, the house drops in value. We'll adjust with them when they get ready to buy. There's nothing for us to worry about. We can't lose on these deals. We cannot lose. And if all that happened, sky falls, chicken little come, you already made thousands of dollars on this property. So I'm going to ask you this question, because this will keep you awake at night. What if you buy a house, buy it with owner financing, and sometime something happens a few years later and price drops, or another recession hits and price drops? Just remember, whatever happens in the future, if you can't figure out a way to fix it, the seller only has two choices. Number one, take the house back. If they want the house back, I'll give them the house back. I'm not signed on it, not on my credit report, so it can't hurt me if I give them the house back. Or number two, they can extend the term and just let me keep doing what I'm doing. All right. When you understand that clearly and you put yourself in a position to where you can't lose, it's pretty hard to lose. Buy, repair, rent. I just went through that. 80% of the value, trust me, even if you pull some cash out of there, it's going to go away quickly. There's always a place for cash to go. Been through that. Now, cash flow shuffle means I got to keep borrowing to get cash in the pot. Fix, borrow, fix, borrow, fix, borrow. Pretty soon I get cut off. And in time, that's going to catch up. And I'm going to wish I never got into that trap. It's caused a lot of bankruptcies. And lenders will cut you off. You can count on that. And the more houses you buy, the bigger your problem gets. One wholesale deal will likely pay you more than the net proceeds of that refi you do. Think about that for a minute. A refi that I have to pay back, a wholesale deal, I get in, get out, get a check, and I have no responsibility to the house whatsoever. One non-refundable deposit can easily do the same. Remember, I get 5 to 10%. I usually get closer to 10%. So, $300,000 house, I'm not giving up the keys for less than $25,000 unless I exhaust the market. And remember, when I put a house out there, it's on a lease purchase, okay? I'm going after the 70% of the people who can't qualify for a loan right now, and I'll give them plenty of time to get qualified. So I got a huge market. And, I'm the only gate they're going to go through to get a house that they can call their own. I'm not renting it to them. I'm leasing it to them with an option to buy, but they got to put up a non-refundable deposit that I'm happy with to get the keys. Remember, that applies to their down payment. They don't lose it. The only way they lose it is that they move out of the house. And that's clearly disclosed up front. So we got no guaranteed debt to pay back. If we don't guarantee debt, we don't need any credit, nothing on your credit report, and you're not going to go into bankruptcy because nobody's going to come after you for a debt because you don't have a debt. A non-recourse debt is not your debt. I got to get that up here. You take over somebody else's debt, that is not your debt legally. So you write down WWRD and put it in front of you next time you get ready to make one of these blunders and ask yourself, is this what Ron would do? And the answer is probably no. Okay, well, that's all for this lesson, but be sure and stay tuned for the next one coming up soon.
That's all for this edition of the Mentor Podcast. To connect with Ron and learn how you can attain financial freedom, as well as up-to-date strategies to grow and protect your wealth based on today's discussion, go to www.connectwiththementor.com.